So therefore, whenever I get chucked into a situation like this, I always feel a little bit like Lady Gaga's husband on the wedding night. You know, I know what to do, but how the hell would you make it interesting? In this most celebratory of years, as it draws to a close, and we reflect on the highs and lows that have taken place, we in this room cannot ignore the fact that 4 million people were deprived of representation in the Palace of Westminster. And in addition to that, our Prime Minister failed really to have Solomon-like judgment by also depriving those 4 million people of further representation in the upper house of Lords. It is only the wisest of leaders that understand the benefits of being magnanimous in victory. And I'm afraid he is not capable of that. On a high note, we celebrated Her Majesty the Queen being our longest reigning monarch. And what a magnificent beacon of sovereignty she has been for all of us. And God bless her for that. How proud we were as a nation earlier this year to celebrate the anniversary of Magna Carta, for example, written in 1215 by our baronial ancestors, a truly remarkable document, the very keystone to our liberty under the law, that a man is innocent until proven guilty, that we have the right to choose to be judged not by the possible coercion of a state-appointed judge, but by our own peers, 12 good men and true, picked at random from our own communities. We all know that as the jury system. That was the very birth of our laws in this country, rising up from the people and not descending down from the masters who rule us. And indeed, we've spread that most noble judicial system throughout much of the free and democratic world. And if you go to the White House in the United States of America, there in pride of place, you will find a copy of our Magna Carta. American law is based upon it. And if you look to the children of our empire, who have continued to celebrate our legacy of Parliament and the rule of law, there you will find stability and prosperity, and democracy and liberty. But you will not, I hasten to add, find a copy of the Magna Carta in the capitals of Europe. Their judicial system was principally founded by Pope Innocent III, who implemented the Spanish Inquisition, among other things. In Europe, you are guilty until proven innocent. You are judged by a state-appointed judge or a panel of 3 state-appointed judges, which is all totally alien to our culture and our common law system. And with much anger and regret, thanks to Gordon Brown and David Cameron, European law now has primacy over British law. And then again earlier this year, how proud we were as a nation as we celebrated the anniversary of Waterloo, 1815. Here was a classic example of neighbouring nations united as one against the forced unification of Europe. And similarly, we paid our respects with great pride earlier this year as we celebrated the anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, 1945. Once again, nations united against those hands of tyranny who wanted to force the unification of Europe. But ladies and gentlemen, of all those souls before us, and all of those yet unborn, how proud will they be of us? What noble deeds will the written word of history say about us? I'm reminded of that great American revolutionary, Dr. Joseph Warren, who died at the Battle of Bunker Hill in 1775, 1 year just before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And when he said, "Will our fathers look from their celestial seats with smiling approbation upon their sons, who boldly stand forth in the cause of virtue?" Are we, ladies and gentlemen, to be known for nothing more than being that generation who gratuitously surrendered the sovereignty of our country, who with frivolous disregard washed away the sacrifice of those who died before us for our independence and the rights of our people to govern themselves? No, we cannot tarnish ourselves with that shame. As a young conservative in 1969, 1970, I believed then that we could have our cake and eat it, that we could still remain as the mother of our Commonwealth with all its preference trade agreements, and that we could also be a part of a European economic community. How wrong I was. We were oblivious to the fact that Ted Heath was fully aware of the unpalatable truth. He sold us down the river, knowing that the ultimate aim of the European Economic Community was designed to undergo a metamorphosis into an eventual single federal European state. And again, I quote the great Joseph Warren: "Who among us would breed a serpent to destroy his children? It is an insult to democracy to refer to what we have now as the creation of a United States of Europe, for it is no such thing. It is far, far closer to a Soviet-style union, thinly coated with an acceptable veneer of democracy." And each Prime Minister since Ted Heath has been aware and mainly compliant with that ultimate goal, Mrs. Thatcher being the exception. And our present Prime Minister has made it patently clear that he is no exception. You see, growing up in the 1950s, as I did, people in this country sailed through life, hardly noticing any intrusion into their lives by the state. The state was principally there to protect the realm and to look after those that couldn't look after themselves. But for the rest of us, it just left us alone to get on with enjoying our life. Over the past 60 years, our country has changed from one of immense patriotic pride, self-belief, honour, integrity, respect, duty, and you can add frugality and prudence to that. Because gone is the notion of make, do and mend, save for a rainy day, neither a lender nor a borrower be. Our society has been steered into a world where, on the premise that debt is good, wealth is an illusion when it's founded upon debt, and you can only continue to live the dream as long as there's somebody out there that's prepared to lend you the money. But the powers that be, they like us to be in debt, because that's the only way that they can have control of our personal wealth. Why do you think that there is such a rapid move now to remove the cash economy? Sweden is going to be the first completely cashless country in Europe. Denmark is already installing banks that are cashless banks. In France, you can't spend more than 1,000 euros in cash on any transaction. The European Union and its inland revenues don't like us to have that independence, because it prevents them from being able to impose restrictions on the movement of people's money, just as they did recently in Cyprus and in Greece. In Cyprus, they just removed money from people's bank accounts. to contribute to a national debt of their creation. Anyone that had more than 100,000 euros in the bank had it confiscated by the government. And unfortunately, technology has fallen into their hands. The composite of recent events shows that in Europe is writing a recipe for civil disobedience and chaos. We have to start by retaking control of our own nation's destiny, and to be able to remove the politicians that don't put our wishes first and our national interests first. Which brings me to the only subject in modern history that is preventing the British people from talking endlessly about the weather. Britain has always benefited from and enjoyed a slow, constant influx of ethnic diversity for the past 2,000 years, which over that time has evolved a common bond of history and shared values. This uncontrolled migration is there for the entire world to see. It simply equates to a divided and volatile society. And in this predatory world that we all live in, a country in chaos is always weak and vulnerable to her enemies. And we now face those enemies from without and from within. Islam, for example, is not shy in telling us of its intentions. The Islamic leaders are being totally honest and truthful and straight up front with us. Democracy is the train we ride to our ultimate goal. There is no such thing as moderate Islam. There is only Islam. They can't be more straightforward than that. Islam is a political agenda, and such agendas are driven by the few and followed blindly by the many. The opinion of the quiet majority is totally irrelevant. I was discussing this recently with a member of Parliament from the Birmingham area, and she said, she assured me that there were Muslims in her constituency. And she said they are absolutely appalled at the atrocities done in the name of Islam. And I said, well, I'm quite sure that's true, madam. I'm sure of it. But the simple fact is that they are not driving the agenda. And at the end of the day, the sheep will always come to the call of the shepherd. We must remember that we are actually a herding animal. And as such, we're all susceptible to radicalization in some form or other, because of what is known in the Freudian world as group polarization. We in this room are stronger and more polarized in our views because we are with like-minded people. We have all chosen to be part of an identifiable intellectual tribe called the United Kingdom Independence Party. We sometimes telephone head office in order to seek instruction on party policy. And we then go out and dutifully comply with its directive. The difference is that Islam believes that democracy's weakness is in its freedom to question. Islam's strength is in the word of the Imam, and his word is absolute. And if we continue to close a vigilant eye to the Trojan horse of Islamic moderation, then we do so at the peril of our children. It gives me no pleasure to stand here like Winston Churchill talking to Lord Halifax in the 1930s. But we need to address this issue now. We have to have the fearless conviction to throw away political correctness. Amen. Right. The time has come for decent, mild-minded Muslim people to speak out loud and clear whether they wish to live with us in a free, modern, progressive, interactive world, or they want to plunge us all back into the barbarism of a 7th century ideology. Because this is not going to go away. We do need Churchill, not Chamberlain, in our leadership at this time. There is little more for me to say on the question of immigration that hasn't already been said. But I will just say this to those people that come here with good intentions. It is an honour and a privilege to live here, and your credibility, your contribution, your integration, and your loyalty is the price that you have to pay for sharing this green and pleasant land. This European Union is the new imperialism of the 21st century. Wake up and recognise it, where you subjugate countries, not with the bullet or the bomb, but by slow entrapment, cultural strangulation, and forced legislation, all aided so magnificently by the EU propaganda machine and the internet. And I'm sure that many of you will have seen those frightening propaganda comic books and games that the EU is now producing, aimed at indoctrinating our young children into becoming upstanding, flag-waving Europeans first, and their British or French or Portuguese identity must become insignificantly second. They've not quite got to the goose-stepping bit yet, but that is undoubtedly on its way. That has the familiar putrefying stench of Germany in 1922, when Adolf Hitler embarked upon his youth indoctrination program, initially aimed at 10-year-olds. And the list of effrontery to everything that we hold dear goes on and on and on. But there is a glimmer of hope. People throughout the continent of Europe, in their millions, are finally awakening to the fact that, like us, they have foolishly sold their birthrights, their national identities, their voluntary ability to contain their own borders and to trade freely with whomsoever they wish. They have exchanged liberty and happiness for national obedience in the only continent on earth that is experiencing both an economic and an influential downward spiral. Our own homegrown political masters are trying to put the fear of lonely isolation into the minds of the British people. But it was our geographic isolation that saved us and the rest of Europe from Nazi Germany. It is our geographic isolation that has made us what we are. It is only... it made us the greatest trading nation on earth. 40% of the entire world's trade came through the port of Liverpool, little more than 100 years ago. My grandparents were married then. It is people that trade, not governments. And trade between people has no bearing whatsoever on membership of this wretched union. And one of these overgrown schoolboys of ours going to learn that you can only negotiate anything in this life from a position of strength and never from a position of weakness. And when the 5th largest economy in the world pulls out, and this federalisation plan for Europe begins to collapse, then and then only can Cameron properly renegotiate the terms of a successful relationship with our European neighbours. We in these islands must not waver in our resolve to reconnect with our great union of English-speaking democracies. For they are the true multi-race kith and kin bonded by a common heritage. History will indeed treat us harshly if we do not remove ourselves from this doomed and devious empire-building enterprise before it completes that metamorphosis and a federal European Union of Socialist Republics. And finally, We must once again stand alone, dare to stand alone, and let us cry out to all those souls before us and all those yet unborn, that we of this generation did not fail them.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.